Having set out the aim of the metaphysics, which is the investigation of the first fundamental causes and principles of reality, Aristotle now begins to pave the way to his own philosophy, one that studies such fundamental causes and principles. In many ways, the metaphysics as a whole is more about questions than answers. It is a collection of 15 interrelated metaphysical puzzles designed to lure or interest the reader and to leverage Aristotle's own metaphysics. He says that these puzzles or problems give the student an endpoint in view. In other words, the study of metaphysics should equip a person with the knowledge needed to resolve these puzzles. It shows the student the explanatory power that metaphysics can have. Without such endpoint puzzles, the student would be like, as Aristotle says, those who do not know in which direction they should walk. Puzzle 1 asks, is there a single science of the four causes or several such sciences? Science in this context means systematic study. It thus has a broader meaning here than the word science has today. The four causes refer to the material, efficient, formal, and final causes that we discussed in Book 1, Book Alpha of the Metaphysics. A single science of fundamental causes, that is metaphysics itself, requires the study of all four causes, yet at the same time the causes seem very different from each other, and so they are not conducive to a single science or one type of study. Puzzle 2 asks, does the same science cover the study of the basic principles of logic and the study of substance? The principles of logic include such things as the law of non-contradiction, that is, that something cannot simultaneously be A and not be A. Substance means that which underlies things, that which is the substrate of things, upholding them. As the reader has seen in the historical overview in Book Alpha, there are a number of contenders weighing in on what substance really is. For example, water, air, and atoms. If the study of logic and the study of substance are not one science, Aristotle asks, then which science would take priority as the most fundamental? Aristotle is searching for the primal, that is the first, most fundamental science. Puzzle 3 asks whether a single science can cover both sensible and suprasensible substances. A sensible substance is one that can be observed through the senses, sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing, usually indicating a physical substance. A suprasensible substance is one that, if it exists, cannot be directly observed using the bodily sense organs. If there is to be a first philosophy, an all-encompassing metaphysics, an essential question for it is, will it cover both types of substance? Puzzle 4 asks, is this science that studies substance the same as that which also studies the properties of substances? A property is an attribute or quality that something has. For instance, a property of an atom is smallness. Puzzle 5 asks, are there only sensible substances or also suprasensible substances? Do only particular physical things exist, or do Platonic forms and Pythagorean mathematical entities and such like also exist? Puzzle 6 asks whether the fundamental elements of things are their material parts or their genera. Do people come to adequately understand something by knowing the material parts of that which something is composed, or do people adequately understand something by identifying the genus to which it belongs? The puzzle asks whether people understand things by what they are made from or by how they are classified by genera. Puzzle 7 asks, if classifying by genus is the answer to puzzle 6, is metaphysics as a first philosophy concerned with the highest genus or all genera? First philosophy is what Aristotle is pursuing here in the metaphysics, the study of the first or fundamental causes and principles of things. If human beings do seek to explain things by genera, this first philosophy study only the highest, the most general of the genera or lower ones as well. To illustrate the point, consider that the horse belongs to the genus of animal, which belongs to the genus of organisms, which belongs to the genus of self-moving objects, and so on. Eventually, Aristotle says the highest genera to which all things belong will be being, existence, and unity. Being meaning existence along with unity. Puzzle 8 questions whether there is something over and above particular individuals. If only particular individual things exist, Aristotle says, then there can be no science of them as genera, because classification into categories is required for science to be possible. If people cannot classify things, then they cannot do science. This puzzle, however, relates to the fact that Aristotle has shown the problematic nature of positing the existence of non-physical entities such as Plato's forms. Genera, after all, would be a type of form. Puzzle 9 explores whether principles are individual things or universals. If they are individual things, Aristotle asks, how can people generalize about them and how can people have knowledge about them? If principles are individual things, that would mean that each principle of each thing would be different, but the condition of knowledge requires that human beings generalize and categorize. On the other hand, if principles are universals, then human beings are in danger of ignoring important differences and falling again into Platonism. Puzzle 10 asks, are the principles of perishable and of imperishable things the same or different? A perishable thing is that which comes into being and then perishes, such as a person. An imperishable thing is one that does not perish, such as a number. A central question to metaphysics is whether the same principles should be used to understand both of these types of things. Aristotle poses a further question stemming from this, writing that if the principles are different, then one puzzle is whether the principles will themselves be perishable or imperishable. Puzzle 11's central question is, are unity and being substances in themselves, or are they attributes of something deeper? In other words, is the fundamental substance underlying everything unity and being, or is there something else underlying these, and how does a fundamental single substance divide out into the multiple entities that human beings perceive around them? Puzzle 12 asks whether numbers, bodies, surfaces, and points are substances or not. If it is agreed that a material object is a substance, and if such bodies are constituted by their surfaces, and if surfaces are constituted by lines, and if lines are constituted by points, then it seems that points are in fact the fundamental substance. This conclusion would seem to vindicate the Pythagoreans who posited mathematical entities as the most fundamental substance. However, such mathematical entities as substances are problematic for reasons mentioned in Book Alpha. In Chapter 8 of Book Alpha, Aristotle says that numbers cannot explain the change and modification that happens to sensible bodies, which is physical bodies, physical things. Puzzle 13 asks, if forms or types exist only in association with particular things, are they then themselves particular things or universals? If they are particulars, then there is the problem, as in Puzzle 9, that knowledge about them cannot be gained because people understand by using universal concepts. However, if people admit that the forms associated with particular things are universals, then they have strayed into the Platonic theory of forms with its attendant problems. Puzzle 14 asks, do the principles have being in potentiality or in actuality? Actuality is that which really exists. Potentiality is that which does not yet exist, but is not impossible to exist. If the first principles exist in actuality, then they must have been preceded by their potentiality, because something always potentially exists before it actually exists. This statement means, however, that the principles are not first or fundamental because something was first before them. Still, if the first principles exist as potentiality, it means that it is not necessary that they actually exist. Puzzle 15's central question is, are the principles universal or particular? A universal is something that applies over many instances, such as a mathematical theorem or a constant of nature. As such, it is repeated in nature. A particular is a thing that exists only as its one particular case and thus is never repeated, such as the actual man, Aristotle. Aristotle is a particular, human is a universal. Aristotle asks whether the first principles of reality are universals or particulars. If they are universals, there is a danger of accepting universal Platonic forms as fundamental principles, and if they are particulars, then it at first seems that science is not possible as it requires universals to operate.